Out of time. We've got 45 minutes with Lorimer, so we're going to make the most of him. Okay, so I can see people are flooding in. If you're just arriving, please do let us know where you're joining us from. It's great to have everybody here. Thank you for signing up, and thank you for joining live. It's wonderful. So good morning, good afternoon, and a very good evening wherever you are in the world. And a very warm welcome to this second webinar in our three-part series with Professor Lorimer Moseley. My name is Joanna Taylor, and I am Director of NOI Group Europe, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Lorimer again this morning. So welcome back, Lorimer.
Thanks, Joe.
Before we dive in, there are just a few quick housekeeping notes. If you have any questions as we go through today's session, please just pop them in either the Q&A or the chat, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. I would urge you to try and put your question in early, because as we get towards the end, we just run out of time. The recording of this session will be sent to everybody who's registered, and it'll also be available on our Clinical Discussions YouTube channel. The link for that I will pop in the chat in just a second. And just to remind you, this is the second of 3 webinars that we're doing with Lorimer. So if you missed the first one, that is available on the YouTube channel to watch on catch up. And at the end of today's session, we're going to be giving you details about Lorimer's upcoming European tour, which is taking place in June this year. He's in Manchester and Norway and Austria. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about any of those events, then please just hang on at the end and we'll tell you all about those and where to find out more information. Okay, let's get going. So before we dive into the topic today, Lorimer, could you just tell everybody a little bit about what you are working on currently?
Well, currently I'm just dusting myself off after not getting a big grant application, a big grant that we applied for, but we're still doing work around it, and that's something that we have been calling the stealth pandemic. I think we have to change the name of that because stealth means something else now. But it captures the idea of invisibility and things flying under the radar. And broadly speaking, we're just moving further towards applying some of the learnings from the chronic pain space to the other 4 of what I describe as the big 5 protective disorders. And I think we might have mentioned that last time. And they are anxiety, depression, fatigue, and post-traumatic stress. So I've got a PhD student who's just started who'll be looking specifically at a transdiagnostic approach to these problems. And we've sort of started that. We've almost done the preliminary stuff that allows us to think, righto, let's really go in hard on this. And for that, we're looking at how the brain does stuff, how your immune system responds in different scenarios to each of the pillars of the Learn, Do, Connect framework that I love at the moment. I think it's really well grounded. It resonates really well with patients and with clinicians, and the hardest group I find, the scientists.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of stuff we're doing. And we got amazing projects being driven by amazing people in our lab, and I could spend half an hour talking about those projects, but we didn't say we'd do that. So,
No.
so maybe we should.
And I think we did talk a little bit more about that in the first session. So if anybody does want to recap on what more detail what Lorimer's doing at the moment, then do check out that first session, which is on the YouTube channel. Thanks, Lorimer. That's great. So let's start with the content for today's session. Could you just tell everybody a little bit? Oh, sorry. The title of today's session is that we are going behind the curtain of good pain education, looking at values, vulnerabilities, strengths and constraints. And this feels like a really honest conversation about what works and what doesn't. Could you just set the scene for us, Lorimer, about what you meant by saying getting behind the curtain pain education?
Yeah, I guess when you asked me, what should we talk about a while ago, I guess I was really in this headspace. It was really, we're doing a lot of work at the moment in rural areas, regional areas of Australia, areas where some of the concepts that we're talking about are really foreign amongst health professionals as well as the general public,
Mm,
areas where there intergenerational cultural or socioeconomic disadvantage. And we're trying to support health professionals in bringing pain education in to their work. Um, and I would often get that question. So, what's behind good pain education? What should I say?
mm,
Well, what's the content? And the more I think about the go-to aspects of pain education, like what are the messages? We've done heaps of research on that. Um, what are the phrasings? What are the delivery strategies? All the stuff that we've actually done a lot of work on. We've published a lot, techniques, strategies, all that sort of stuff. Um, that's all important. But we started talking about education being like a dance. Uh, you really have to go with the vibe to
mm,
quite an extent, and you're really doing it with someone else who might also be wanting to lead, and you got to work out at each moment where the power differentials are and respect them, and
mm,
I guess own the expertise related differentials and relinquish the relevance differentials, the importance of different things and the lived experience expertise, all these sorts of things. So I
mm,
really felt like this is like a dance. And then I thought, so when you go and see a dance, um, a funny thing unrelated, this is totally unrelated, Joe, but a funny thing's happening in my brain as I talk here because I spent a lot of years on the east coast of Australia where you say dance. And I have now lived for 15 years in South Australia where you say dance.
ah,
And and each time I've said that word, I've felt my brain go and a little delay happens. I just love watching your brain in motion on that. Anyway, unrelated. So I was thinking about this dance, and when you go to a performance, you see what's in front of the curtain. What you
mm,
don't see is all the stuff behind the curtain, and I guess that's what I was thinking about. And for me, what's the stuff behind the curtain for me when I go to prepare for that dance? Dance.
yeah,
Um, and for me, and what do I think helps me um, be a better educator? And
mm,
what's the aspirations for me where by which I want to get better at it? And I think I come back to things that permeate so many parts of my life, but I think they're really relevant to this space. They're relevant to clinicians, and that is values, vulnerabilities.
mm,
I often say constraints and opportunities, but you could say strengths and constraints. I think that's what we said. So really, the phrase behind the curtain is what should we do inside? What should we be aware of about ourselves actually in
mm,
order to be better pain educators? And maybe you could just replace pain education with clinician or
yeah,
or health educator. What do I think? So those conversations we've been having a lot of those conversations with people who are working really hard in really challenging circumstances in and it's a bit of a mess with your mind. I was going to swear then, but I didn't. But it's a mind far out. It's really bad. Um, so yeah, so we're really trying to work hard on that. How do we become better? Anyway, that was such a long-winded answer to
no, it
your.
really wasn't. Thank you. Thank you. Lorimer, I know that people say this about you all the time, but you make things so easy to understand. Thank you. Makes like
Wow, I felt like that was not a very good answer. Like I got to the end and I thought, oh shit, I failed on that one. But
no.
thanks.
So you have this unique ability. It's amazing. Thank you so much. Really helpful. So let's start with values. And when we talk about the values that underpin good pain education, what are we actually talking about there? And the core values that you see as being the most important?
Yeah, I think there's two. I take two angles on these pillars, right? Of behind the curtain. One angle is what are what are the values that seem to be, as you've just asked, important for success? Uh, it doesn't mean they're going to guarantee it, but without them, success becomes a lot more difficult. And there I keep coming back to things like total respect, like
Yeah.
total respect for the material, I reckon, for the provenance of the material. And what I mean by that is to understand and respect how we got to where we are. So for me as a scientist, I have deep respect for the scientific method, and I have a deep respect for the scientific community and
Mm,
the many um, intentional uh, intentional ways in which we've arrived at these are the contents or these are the messages. And so respect for that. I think respect, I reckon owning the respect for the human in it, like
mm,
the not just the human you're dealing with or the humans you're dealing with, but with humanness. I reckon humanness is extraordinarily complex and extraordinarily well suited to protect itself. And pain is I believe pain is a mechanism by which the human protects itself. And I think I think if you don't really buy that, if you don't really respect that material, or you don't respect the way the knowledge has come about, I think it can be pretty hard to sell it because ultimately I think we're information selling.
mm,
Um, yeah, and I think there are other, I am learning more at the moment. I feel like I'm on a pretty steep learning curve at the moment around other ways of knowing things. And I don't like to position other ways as the others to science. Yeah, and I'm learning a bit from my daughter, who is an extraordinary person, about the general concept of othering. And uh, those those who are listening, who are into sociology or anthropology, will be familiar with that term. But it's more or less suggesting there's a dominant in-group or dominant theory, and everything else is the other stuff. And by doing
mm,
that, you devalue that. So I'm on a steep learning curve of respecting other ways of knowing things without letting go of the science that I love. Like, and I'm finding
yeah.
that a challenge to do, but I respect that it's there. And then I guess respect. So all of this is about respect and deep respect for the learner,
Yeah.
and never letting go of that deep respect. And I think you can easily feel the tension and or the resistance, uh,
Mm,
and interpret that as some sort of um, deficiency in the learner. And I think having respect for the learner and for their experience all the time, I think that's a core value that feels important to me. And as we said when we were talking about this, this is a lot of this is my opinions. It's not empirically demonstrated that respect for things is a core value that will determine the success or not of pain education. There's no empirical data on that, of which I'm aware, but that's one. So
yeah.
respect, and I think always trying, and I often, like, if I was talking in a live situation here, I'd be doing all these actions at the moment that would give people the vibe of trying to feel what it's like to be that person in front of you,
Yeah.
trying to feel what that's like. And for me, I find myself trying to flip around and face the other way and adopt the posture and say, what's it like looking out from there? I don't know what that value is, and maybe that value is tied up with respect. So I started the answer to the question with there's two ways of looking at each of these pillars. So one is what are core values and doing your best and all that sort of stuff. Uh, but the other angle on it, I reckon that I think of more when I think about preparing yourself is to know what your values are, to actually
Mm,
know what it is that you value in general.
mm,
Why is it that you value the educational encounter? Why are you doing it? as a clinician. Why educate?
Mm,
Is it because you value your own position in that relationship, some sort of rank?
mm,
Is it because you value economic security? And people might think,
mm,
what? How does that relate to education?
mm,
Well, I think some people go into education if they're convinced that it's going to be good for their business or it's going to be good for the bottom line. And I'm not casting judgment on any of these values at all. I'm just suggesting that knowing your values, I think, promotes the likelihood of a relationship success.
yeah.
Uh, and I think education is that dance, that it's a relational dance. Yeah, so it's more, I guess it's more about working out who you are in this moment and
Mm,
yeah, yeah. Do you value outcomes? Do you value process? Do you anyway,
mm.
I don't know.
I think that's fascinating. Really, really fascinating. Uh, yeah, thinking about your own values, actually, as well as the material and the person in front of you and what you're trying to, why you're there, what you're trying to achieve.
Hmm.
Fascinating.
And I reckon, Joe, that I just saw a little comment from Pete Moore, your legend. Good to see you, Pete.
Maybe.
Not that I'm saying you. Good to see your name, Pete. If it's not Pete and you're pretending to be Pete, I wish I was seeing Pete. But I on that values thing, I think if you adopt this core value of respect
Mm,
for the learner, then you are immediately wanting to understand their values as well.
yeah,
And where can you find value alignment in that dance?
yeah.
Because once you can find that value alignment, I think then you've got a connector, you've got some equality. Um, some of these ideas are things that I've learned from my PhD student, Morel Wilson, in the last 24 hours. So
Mm.
um, so much is going on. Anyway, sorry. Next.
No, thank you. Thank you. I've, we've talked about values. What about vulnerabilities? Where are we vulnerable as clinicians when it comes to pain education? And what are the things that can undermine even our best intentions?
Yeah, I think this is really important, and I think they're all important, but I think it's something that we're not even as much as values encouraged to understand and to look at. So our own vulnerabilities, I think, will determine our approach to pain education.
Mm,
And an easy to access example of that might be there's a whole bunch of people that will not want to speak in public. And that's from the perspective of a PhD supervisor, trying to coach people, encourage people to give scientific presentations. We always talk about values and vulnerabilities. What are the values and vulnerabilities that are putting you under threat here? Why
mm,
is this a threatening situation? And I think we can apply the same thing to an educational context. To know your own vulnerabilities, to respect your vulnerabilities, and not feel like you've got to make yourself vulnerable to a point of not feeling safe, because you're not going to communicate effectively when you're not feeling safe,
mm,
and to respect the learner's vulnerabilities, uh, and to know that if they're feeling vulnerable, if they're not feeling safe, they're not going to learn. There's some really cool stuff, and this is related to the stealth pandemic stuff. There's cool stuff emerging in animal and human research around. I might have talked about this, I can't remember last time, but around danger learning and safety learning, and
I
people
think we
out
touched on
there are
it.
doing great work. Yeah, Anne Mulders is doing great work on this around a
Yeah.
conditioning model. There are people doing animal studies, but if you are feeling under threat, your your system doesn't want to learn what's safe about this. It wants to learn what's dangerous about
Mm,
this. And my gut feeling on that is that if we're not respecting the vulnerabilities in people in front of us or in our own vulnerabilities, then we're running the risk of not only not learning the groovy safe stuff, but actually learning stuff we didn't even intend to be there that might imply danger. Uh, and the, the take home, I guess, the take home action from that for me is the same as the values. Know your vulnerabilities, and if you want to, and or they're in the way of you doing a good job, resolve them.
Mm,
Work out how to be less vulnerable. If or you might decide, well, they're important for my survival. So if they are in the way of me doing pain education well, I'm not going to do it and go and do something else.
oh, thank
Well, it's full
you.
on, really, if you think about it, isn't it? There's got to be some famous person who said something feels a bit biblical, but know thyself,
Yeah, yeah.
sort of stuff. And there's always a real focus in pain education on who's in the room, like who are the learners, what are their cognitive capacity, and blah 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 blah.
Mm,
All that's important, but I think there's often not enough emphasis on who's the teacher, who are you.
mm. Brilliant, fascinating. Oh my goodness, I could talk about this with you for like hours, but we do have to move on a little bit. There's a question from Mick actually, which it would be appropriate to take now. Mick Thacker, lovely to
Oh,
have you here,
Mick.
Mick.
Hello,
Thanks for
Mick.
joining.
Trots.
Mick, I think you're going to be in Manchester, aren't you, with Lorimer in June, which is really exciting, and I look forward to seeing you there. So Mick says,
I
"Is
can't
this?"
wait, Mick. I'm going to be wearing my baggy green. Just to let you know, Mick, I'll be wearing the baggy green cap. And the first half of our discussion will be around the ashes. That's just for Mick. It's only for Mick, not for anyone.
Oh,
Sorry,
fantastic.
what did Mick have to
Okay,
say?
so Mick says, is this fundamentally about updating your own models with those of the learner patient till you reach a mutual dance?
Sorry, I've just seen his other message. If he wears that cap, I'm going to Liverpool. Liverpool doesn't get you out of the fire, Mick. Um, Sorry, Joe. Can you read it again? Read it out again,
You
please.
were
Sorry.
thinking about the cap, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. I was
uh,
distracted by cricket.
okay, so Mick says, is this fundamentally about updating your own models with those of the learner, the patient, till you reach a mutual dance?
Um, I don't know. I don't know. Well, maybe. So I loved the way that was articulated, and hearing it, I thought yes, yes, and then I thought, oh, maybe, yeah. So ma- that feels like for me that's part of it, Mick. And it feels like another part of it is um, recognizing what your own. Yeah, I think it probably is recognizing what your own models are, and those models might be drivers like values, or they might be inhibitors or danger models like vulnerabilities. And maybe the dance does occur when, yeah, I love this. Now I think about it, Mick, I'm loving it. That maybe the dance does occur when there's alignment between the models that are dominating outputs from you and the learner. I'm going to think more about that. As usual, Mick, I know you ever takes Mick one or two sentences to make me go. So I'll be doing that for a while now. I'll think more about that. Let's have just so many good conversations in Manchester.
Just then you'll better listen to all this. I'm sure that we'll get the two of you up on stage to have one of these conversations. Sounds like an opportunity. I've got a
We will.
question
I
here
think
from
we will
Catherine.
actually. I think that's in
Sorry,
the
Lorimer.
program. I think it's in the program. I think, yeah, I think we are doing something like that.
Definitely. And
Yeah.
it'll be over a glass of wine or a beer, I'm sure. Um, Catherine Cook, thank you for your question. That is actually my next question. So, could you give us an example of what vulnerability looks like in practice?
Hmm. Nah, no, not really, but I could help you imagine or remember what it feels like in practice. And it feels like you're losing them. It feels like your own distress is starting to, or you're starting to have some distress. Yeah,
Mm,
if you had a heart rate monitor on, your variability would shrink and your heart rate would increase. And um, so I think that's what it feels like. In the spirit of your question, Catherine, I think um, it might it might if I don't know, but if an observer was describing the situation where there's a clear vulnerability that's, if you like, in the ideas that Mick was talking about, that is dominating outputs and not allowing you to dance with the learner, then it might look like the relationship's breaking down. You're getting the, see if I can do that. You're seeing the fuck off posture from the learner. You're seeing similar postures from the educator.
mm,
Another aspect on vulnerability, though, I think that often comes up is that dilemma that I think a lot of clinicians have around how vulnerable to be in a clinical encounter. I think
mm,
about that a fair bit, and there's I mean psychologists talk about this a lot more and have way more expertise on this. So I'm only really commenting on my gut feelings on this. But my gut feelings are probably around uh, my so how comfortable am I sharing this vulnerability? How confident am I that it will be honored, that it will be respected, and that it will be helpful to get a shift in understanding that I'm hoping this person will achieve.
mm,
So often people, when they talk about vulnerabilities, they're talking about that sort of stuff. Um, Oversharers versus cold-hearted faces and finding that balance. And I just come back to exactly the same thing. Well, you got to find out who you are. What are you going to do?
mm. Oh, thanks, Lorimer. That's great. I'm keen to move on because we've got a few more questions we'd like to cover. So we've looked at where we can be vulnerable, and flipping that, what are the real strengths of modern pain education approaches? What are we actually getting right?
Well, I think the the idea of strengths in those four pillars is more along the lines of what are your strengths.
Right.
But we can also ask the same question on what strengths seem to be associated with more or less successful pain education.
Mm,
Um, and what, but I think your last question around that is linked and is really important. What are we getting right? And that's the easiest one to answer, I think, because we're getting more right than we were. I think we're getting, I really do think we're getting the messages righter, more right. Um, we're getting the strategies righter,
mm,
uh, and I and probably more targeted. And I come back to that learn, do, connect idea where I can't remember, Joe. Did we talk about that last time? Learn,
yeah,
do,
we did
connect.
talk
I
about
think we
that
did
quite
because
a
I think
bit,
I've got a
actually.
yeah. I think I got something from Michael Bolton about that actually.
Yeah.
Um, the the learn, do, connect idea is almost like a way of just trying to remind yourself that if you want someone to learn something, um, make sure they're also doing or connecting. And if you want someone to do something, make sure they're also learning or connecting. So at least two of those things happening at the same time.
Mm,
So I think that's a strength of more contemporary pain education, being really strategic about the biology of learning and how you can leverage the biology of learning with every moment in the pain education interaction.
mm,
The 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 presence of strength in those sort of four things: values, vulnerabilities, strengths or opportunities, and constraints. The presence of strengths, I think, is again, know yourself. If you're a good storyteller, tell great stories. If you're a good drawer, do great drawings.
Mm,
Do you know what I mean? Like understand what it is that you're good at, and do it.
mm,
So long as you can do it with an understanding of your values and your vulnerabilities, there's the opportunity to do it. Sometimes there's not the opportunity to play to your strengths as much. Uh, yeah, that's probably where I was thinking. And when we look at what strengths are associated with better or worse pain education, then those things, security officer's about to come into my office, and I'll just say, "Hi, no worries, no worries." Me and 250 people online are very pleased for your service. So yeah, thanks, you too. Bye. Um, uh, yeah, so I think the strengths that are associated with it are, I mean, people who are good storytellers can land things more effectively. Good salespeople can land things more
mm,
effectively. Um, you might have strengths in being really patient, really calm. I was very fortunate enough to celebrate with the great David Butler his birthday the other day, and David has extraordinary strengths. Like he's a remarkable human. But some of the strengths that I think people don't notice that he leverages, I'm sure, are are the ways that he can adjust volume and adjust his pitch really effectively, and he can hit a
mm,
resonance. And he's a performer, and he uses that. I've seen him use that in clinical and other interactions. Uh, yeah, I really like the idea of, and you see people around. I see people around the Pain Revolution setup who
mm.
are clearly excellent educators, and they have totally different strengths from each other. They're
Yeah.
not all carbon copies of the ones we think should be the best.
What I
They get
think is
their own
really
outcomes.
interesting here, Lorimer, is that the things that you've talked about are predominantly recognizing these things in yourself.
Oh, well, that probably speaks to the bias of my response, right? But I probably I probably do tend to think, oh yeah, that's good about me. I try to know thyself though.
Yeah, know thyself.
I
That's
have
what, and yeah,
vulnerabilities for sure, and I have
yeah,
I have values that help and values that get in the way, and
yeah. And
I
that's not
have
always the
strengths.
obvious answer, is it? To actually notice the things that you're doing. You sort of people are expecting a list of bullet points that, oh, this is what we're doing well, this is what we need to be aware of. But actually, what we're saying here is you're asking people to look inside themselves about what they're
Yeah,
doing well and recognizing what they're doing well as what they need to work on.
yeah, I reckon, and they'll, when you get more familiar, I think, with your strengths, but also with your vulnerabilities and values, you'll see more ways
Mm,
to pair up, learn and do, or to pair up, do and connect. In fact, you might have real strengths in fostering a connection
mm,
between you and the learner, or between two learners. That might be, you might be fantastic at that. And you hate public speaking, or you hate tech. But now you've got a mechanism where you've got a message you want to get across. We'll couple that learn with the connect, and you can superpower the learn. Or you might be someone who is fantastic at motivating other people to do things they haven't done. Uh, but you might not be so good at establishing connection in the room. Well, focus on the learn and do. And
That's really interesting. Thank you. It's encouraging to hear as well, actually. Um, but of course, we people don't work in ideal conditions. So let's have a think about constraints and the real world limitations that people do face in clinic when working with patients. What are the main constraints that you see that can affect how people can deliver pain education in practice?
yeah, I think the most obvious constraint is time.
Yeah.
It's really hard with time. And um, a lot of, well, GPs in this country, it's 8 minute medicine, I think. Um, Physios don't have a lot of time and certainly don't have many sessions funded by the government, at least, for
Mm,
really time-consuming interventions. So, what are the constraints you have to work within? I mean, there are other constraints like the setting in which you work. You know, in a prison, on a station, uh, in a busy hospital department, in ICU. All these constraints, I think, are relevant. And I think that therefore, we in health, it seems like we develop clinical guidelines for things, um, and pain education is, or chronic pain care, of which education is first line intervention,
mm,
is often constructed by probably um, tertiary care centres in big metropolitan settings. Um, and the further away from that you get, the less possible it is to implement guidelines. And often I think people feel like those guidelines are, well, they're not for the patients I see. I see different patients from that.
mm,
And you'd apply the same thing, I think, to systematic review outcomes or clinical trial outcomes where clinicians can find themselves thinking, well, I've never seen the average patient from those trials. Um, or the setting in which I see patients, there's no way I'd be able to do that. And they're the sort of constraints that I think uh, I would really like them to result in us all collaborating towards um, the best
mm,
version of this in each setting, for example, or each constraint set. More often than that, it feels like the system goes to accusations of not doing it well or not doing it enough, or what are the barriers and facilitators of you delivering care in the guidelines? And how can we overcome them or promote the facilitators? And sometimes I think, oh, maybe a better question is, what are the things we need to do to optimize your intervention with these constraints based on your values and vulnerabilities and strengths?
mm,
A different kind of consideration. Um, but doesn't matter where I am on earth talking about this stuff, there will be people who are feeling like they're not very good at this. And when you sit down and you have probably a couple of glasses of wine with them,
mm,
you realize they're amazing at it, but the constraints on their practice mean that they can't do any of the stuff that's in the clinical trials or in the
mm,
articles or the clinical guidelines. And for me, and around Pain Rev and the Equip project that we're doing in regional rural Australia, um, I'm getting great value out of conversations with
mm.
those people who are doing this well under extraordinary constraints.
I'd love to
And
ask you, Lorimer, here, have you got an example where you've seen somebody overcome a constraint in a really creative way you thought, that you could share with us?
well, I've seen people implement amazingly effective pain education under constraints that would leave me thinking, what's the point? For example, a paramedic from rural Western Australia, um, who did I think she might have done the local pain educator program anyway. Lots of
Mm,
pain education training, maybe the professional certificate through the uni here. And was telling me the story of, I was saying, oh, so as a paramedic, what opportunities do you have to deliver pain education? And she said, well, every night. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, most of our calls between sort of 10 a.m., 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. are acute on chronic presentations. We'll go to the house very distressed, in a lot of pain, and previously give them the green whistle, try and get them into the ambulance, go to the
mm,
hospital, they get admitted, they spend 5 or 6 days in a rural hospital. Now, And she said, now I might use a green whistle, but mainly I just use education. I said, what do you mean? Well, I just get people to calm down and explain to them a little bit of how their system is ramped up to protect them. It's keeping them safe. And should we just see what
Mm,
happens when we recognize you haven't, fallen down the stairs or so she had these sort of three questions she'd ask. Um and she was getting conceptual shifts in these people
mm,
and if I go to learn, do, connect, by connecting, extraordinary connecting, doing, breathing while talking through, getting them to think through what does pain mean in this situation because
mm,
it doesn't reflect a massive injury because nothing happened. But full, like going back to the very first question, but full respect for that person's situation and what they're feeling. Full respect for the power of the material and the power of understanding to enable someone's nervous system to solve the problem that they're faced in that moment. I mean, that's so cool. And that's sort of some of the
really
language that she
cool.
was using to describe, almost miraculous. But, and I'm sure there are people on this call, and I talk to people all the time who would say, ah, come on. And I am now sufficiently convinced that those things can happen. They're difficult to happen, but
Yeah.
that person, the mix of her values, vulnerabilities,
Mm,
amazing strengths within the constraints of half an hour in someone's home in a emergency situation, and she's landing these key concepts.
mm.
Well, how good. And
That
they're
is
they're
cool.
transforming her nervous system in the moment.
Yeah.
In the moment. And oh yeah, I didn't finish it. So she said, oh, I hardly take people to hospital now. They always end up saying, don't worry about it. I'll make it through the night. So good.
That
So
is
good.
such a cool story. That is
Yeah.
really, really cool. And it demonstrates just everything that you've been talking about for the last 40 minutes. Absolutely fantastic. I'm so
Wow.
glad, Lorimer, we ended on that because we are going to wrap up now. Um, we're just going to tell you a little bit about Lorimer's upcoming European tour, and then I'm going to ask him to give us a key takeaway for from what he's talked about today. Uh, fantastic. So, Lorimer, you are coming to Europe in June this year. First of all, you're in Manchester for an EP3, which is the first time we've done an EP3 in the UK. So we are really excited. And as you've seen, we've got Mick Thacker coming, and there's Tasha Stanton coming, and there's a couple more speakers that have just been confirmed. Do you know who they are? Who the other two are?
I think I do, but I'm nervous about saying it before,
Okay, don't.
unless we're not allowed to. I'm not sure, and I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm not
It's definitely
quite.
Tasha and definitely Mick's coming. So we're allowed to release those two names. And we've got this is really just to let you know that the early bird discount for the EP3 is about to end. It's in about a week's time. I will send you details of all of this in the post-event follow-up. But do go and check it out if you're interested because the program is starting to be finalized and it is going to be like so
We
cool and a lot of fun.
we should get the sign off on announcing who's coming because there's some legends who are coming.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so I'm just not in. It's not my gig, right? I'm just the hired talent.
You just turn up
But
and deliver
but
it.
there's the program's going to be tops, and we've really it's going to be tops. It's going to be tops.
She's going to be great. And I think the thing that I understand about the EP3s is that it's just so much more than just the education, that there is a lot of fun and it'll be a real mix of how things are delivered, but it'll be so content rich as well. It'll be absolutely fantastic. So if you are interested in that, jump onto the Noi Group website. All the details are there, but just be mindful of the fact that the early bird does finish in a week, and it's quite a considerable saving. So it's well worth getting it if you're thinking of joining that event. So
Can I
thank you.
jump in there, Joe?
You can.
So if you come to EB3, you will learn, you will do, and you will connect.
Amazing. Nice little hook there, Lorimer. You're good, aren't you?
Playing to my strengths, Joe. Playing to my strengths.
Fantastic. So we're coming to the end of our time together today, Lorimer. Oh, it goes by, it just goes by in a heartbeat. It's fantastic. I've enjoyed it so much. If there's one key message you would like to leave people with as they go about the rest of their day or go into their evening, from what you said today, what would it be?
One key message. Uh, know yourself. How's that?
No, I think that's great. That works. That really works. And it again ties into everything that you've talked about throughout this session. So thank you, Lorimer. Just to remind you all that this is the second webinar of three. So we've got one more coming up. That one we'll let you know when that is. Keep an eye out for that and do come and join us for that. If you want to watch the first webinar that we did, it's on the YouTube channel. All the links for where to find this stuff is at the top of the chat. So go and click those and subscribe, like, share with all your friends and colleagues. And we hope that you've enjoyed listening to this conversation today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, Lorimer.
Thanks, Joe. That's great to chat.
Thanks, everybody.
I
Take
think my
care.
computer
Enjoy the rest.
does things now if I do that. Hand effects using hand gestures. Is there anything?
Is that? I don't know. I don't know.
Who knows?
Anyway, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Take care, everybody.
Ciao.
Cheers. Ciao.
See ya. Bye.